Summer is supposed to be a season of warmth, freedom, and fun. But when the sun goes down and the air turns heavy, that same freedom can twist into something terrifying. From late-night drives to strange figures lurking in the heat, these 3 true summer horror stories will make you think twice about those long nights and endless roads. Story 1. The Empty Campsite. It was the middle of July, and my friends and I decided to go on a weekend camping trip before college started back up. There were 5 of us. Me, my best friend Kyle, his girlfriend Rachel, and 2 other friends, Jake and Mariah. We loaded up the car with tents, food, and fishing gear, and drove 3 hours out to a state park in the middle of nowhere. The sun was still up when we arrived, and the air was thick with summer heat. We parked at the ranger station, checked in, and hiked about a mile down a dirt trail toward the spot the ranger had assigned us. That's when we saw it. The campsite was already occupied. At first we thought someone must have made a mistake. There were 2 tents set up, a fire pit with half-burned logs, and even a pan sitting on a small propane stove, the kind you'd use to cook something quick. But there was no one there, not a single person. We called out, thinking maybe the campers had gone for a walk. No response. The thing was, it didn't look like they'd left willingly. A bag of chips was ripped open on the picnic table, and I swear I could smell meat still cooking in that pan, like it had been left only minutes ago. Rachel looked uneasy right away. "Guys, this doesn't feel right," she said. "People don't just leave all their stuff like this." Kyle, always the practical one, shrugged. "Maybe they went fishing or got lost on a trail. We'll let the ranger know later. For now, we set up camp." So we did. We pitched our tents a little farther down the clearing, away from the abandoned ones. As night fell, the forest grew heavy with the sounds of crickets and the distant hoot of an owl. We built a fire and tried to ignore the empty tents looming in the shadows just beyond our circle of light. It wasn't until around midnight that things got strange. We were sitting around the fire when we heard footsteps, slow, deliberate steps in the dry leaves. Everyone froze. The sound circled the camp, first behind Rachel, then behind me, then closer to the abandoned tents. Kyle called out, "Hello? Anyone there?" Silence. Then we heard it, a voice, not loud but whispering. It sounded like it was calling our names. I swear I heard my own name, Eli, Eli, drifting from the direction of the empty tents. Mariah's face went pale as she whispered. I heard it too. It said my name. We grabbed our flashlights and shined them toward the tents. Nothing, just 2 nylon shelters, still as stone. But the voices didn't stop. One after another, each of us heard our names being whispered, always just out of reach. Jake, trying to act tough, marched toward the tents. "All right, whoever's screwing with us, knock it off," he shouted. He pulled open the flap of the first tent. Empty. He yanked open the second. Also empty, but when he turned back to us, his face was drained of all color. "There's nothing inside," he said, "but the ground is wet." That made no sense. It hadn't rained in weeks. We went to look, and sure enough, the soil inside the tent was damp, as if something had been sleeping directly on it. We barely slept that night. Every few minutes, one of us swore we heard more footsteps, more whispers. At one point, Rachel let out a scream, saying she felt something brush her leg inside the tent. By morning, we were done. We packed our gear in silence and practically jogged back up the trail. When we reached the ranger station, we reported what we'd found. The ranger frowned, saying no one had checked in at that site for over a week. "But the food?" I protested. "The fire pit, the tents." The ranger just shook his head. "We sent someone out there 2 days ago. The site was empty then too. We never went camping again after that trip. And sometimes, late at night, I still hear my name being whispered. Soft, insistent, just like that night in the woods." That was just the beginning. If abandoned campsites send chills down your spine, wait until you hear what happens when a summer drive takes a turn down the wrong road. Story 2. The Hitchhiker on Route 19. It was the summer after my sophomore year of college, and I had just finished a late-night shift at the diner where I worked. The roads were nearly empty, and I had a 40-minute drive back home down Route 19, a long stretch of highway that cuts through farmland and woods. The air was heavy with that sticky July heat, and I had my windows down to catch a breeze. About 10 miles in, I saw him. A man was standing on the shoulder, one thumb sticking out, trying to hitch a ride. Normally, I wouldn't have stopped. My parents had always warned me never to pick up strangers. But something about the way he looked got to me. He was wearing a long, dark coat despite the heat, and his shoulders slumped like he'd been walking forever. I slowed down and pulled over. He stepped into the glow of my headlights, and I finally saw his face. Pale, tired. His eyes looked, I don't know, hollow, like he hadn't slept in years. "Thanks," he said, voice low and raspy, and slid into the passenger seat. The moment he got in, I noticed two things. First, he was soaking wet. His coat dripped onto my seat like he just climbed out of a river. Second, the air turned ice cold. My windows were down, but suddenly it felt like someone had cranked up the AC. I tried making small talk. "Rough night?" He didn't answer. He just started humming. This strange, tuneless hum that sent shivers crawling up my arms. I focused on the road, glancing at him out of the corner of my eye. He kept staring straight ahead, humming under his breath, water dripping steadily onto the floor mat. When we passed under a streetlight, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. He wasn't casting a shadow. The light hit me, the dashboard, the windshield, but not him. It was like he wasn't fully there. I thought about pulling over and telling him to get out, but I was too scared. My hands gripped the wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Finally, after what felt like forever, he spoke. "You can drop me off up ahead." His voice was flat, almost mechanical. I nodded quickly, too nervous to ask where up ahead was supposed to be. About 2 minutes later, he pointed to a gravel pull-off near an old wooden bridge. I slowed to a stop, heart pounding. He opened the door, stepped out, and without another word, walked toward the bridge. That's when I noticed something on the seat, a wet handprint, pressed deep into the fabric like someone had leaned there with all their weight. I grabbed my phone and snapped a picture before the water could soak in. Then I floored it, not daring to look in the rearview mirror. The next morning, curiosity got the better of me. I told my coworker at the diner what happened, and she gave me this strange look. "You don't know about Route 19?" she asked. I shook my head. She leaned in closer. 20 years ago, a man drowned under that old bridge. They say he was hitchhiking home when a driver swerved and ran him off the road. Car plunged straight into the river. He didn't make it. Since then, people have claimed to see him walking that stretch of highway on hot summer nights. I laughed nervously, but when I checked my phone later, the photo I'd taken was still there. A perfect wet handprint on my passenger seat. Only, it had changed. The shape was no longer just a smear of water. It looked like fingers digging in. I sold the car a month later. Creepy enough, it gets worse. Because sometimes the scariest part of summer isn't the open road. It's what's waiting for you back home. Story 3. The House That Breathed. The summer before my senior year of high school, I agreed to house sit for a family that lived a few streets over. They were leaving for a week-long vacation in July, and all I had to do was bring in the mail, water the plants, and keep an eye on things. The house was older, 2 stories, creaky floorboards, big windows that let in the heat. During the day it wasn't so bad, but at night the place felt wrong, heavy, like the air itself was pressing down on me. The first night I stretched out on the couch with the TV on low. Around midnight I muted it for a second, thinking I heard something. A low groan like wood shifting. At first I chalked it up to the house settling in the heat, but then it happened again. A long, deep sound, almost like the house itself was breathing. I stood in the hallway, listening. The noise seemed to travel through the walls, inhale, exhale, faint but steady. I pressed my ear against the plaster and swore I felt it vibrate beneath my cheek. The second night things escalated. I woke up to the sound of doors opening upstairs. Not slamming, just quietly creaking open, one after another, like someone was walking room to room. I grabbed a flashlight and forced myself up the stairs, heart racing. Every door was wide open. When I went back downstairs, the TV remote wasn't on the table where I left it. It was on the floor by the front door. By the third night, I barely slept at all. Every few minutes, I heard faint whispers drifting through the hall. Sometimes it sounded like one voice, other times like several overlapping, but I could never make out the words. At one point, I swore I heard my own name, spoken softly from the dark kitchen. I tried to laugh it off the next morning, telling myself I was just spooked from being alone. But when I watered the plants in the sunroom, I noticed something that made my stomach knot. One of the windows was fogged up, even though it was sweltering outside. On the glass, faint handprints trailed downward, as if someone had pressed their palms against it from the inside and slid them down slowly. By the 4th night, I was on edge. I decided to sleep with all the lights on. Around 2 a.m., I woke to the sound again. That deep, groaning inhale and exhale, louder this time. My phone was on the coffee table, and I turned on the voice recorder. I wanted proof. As soon as I hit record, the whispers started. Dozens of voices, murmuring just beneath hearing, like a crowd talking in another room. My chest tightened. I forced myself to say out loud, "Who's there?" Silence. Then 3 words, clear as day, spoken right behind me. "Get out now." I spun around, flashlight beam shaking, but no one was there. The room was empty. The sound stopped. The next morning, I packed my bag and called the homeowners, telling them I wasn't feeling well and couldn't finish the week. They didn't sound surprised. That night, lying awake in my own bed, I couldn't resist listening to the recording. Most of it was muffled, but the last part made my blood run cold. After my shaky voice asked, "Who's there?" You could clearly hear the response. Only it wasn't just "get out now," there was more. A chorus of voices whispered layered over one another, repeating a phrase I could barely make out. I replayed it over and over until I finally understood. Still here, still here, still here. A week later, I ran into the dad of the family at the grocery store. I tried to make small talk, but finally I asked, "Hey, has anything weird ever happened in your house?" He went quiet, then sighed. You could say that. The house was built over the site of an asylum that burned down in the 1940s. People say it still carries the voices of the ones who didn't make it out. He gave me a tight smile and added, "Guess it was cheaper land." I never stepped foot in that house again. But sometimes, on hot summer nights, I swear I can still hear that deep, groaning breath in the walls of my own room. Summer nights can feel endless, but for some, they end far too soon in terror. From voices in the woods, to vanishing hitchhikers, to houses that breathe with the dead, these stories remind us that not even summer sunshine can chase away the darkness. This is Whispers Between Worlds, and we upload horror daily.